Ding! Coming in at 150
pounds.
Okay, 150 pounds. Carrying no notebooks or carrying no notebooks. Because it's all in her head. We've got the Panzer. We decided to make this video because we were doing a Zoom school visit thing with students, and we always get a question of, how is it like writing with your sister or publishing a book?
That's her kid voice.
And no, it could be better than that. And then I started answering the question this last time, and I just kept going and going and going.
Yes, you
and
did.
I felt so bad. Like, I was looking at myself from above thinking, stop talking. But I couldn't. So we decided to put it up on the internet for anyone who is interested in the actual ins and outs and intricacies of co-writing a book and publishing. But this one is about co-writing a book, isn't it, Meika?
It sure is. Okay, so first things first, we like to settle on a story idea. It's clear, it's very important for you to figure out what your idea is in the first place. So how do we decide on an idea? What are some ways that we get inspiration, I guess?
So sometimes the spirit moves us in a dream.
Yes, very Haitian of us. Yep.
If we're reading an article online and we think, oh my god, this would be an amazing story, that will give us an inspiration where we're thinking, oh, what if this happens? If we're reading another fiction story and we think, oh, what if a story happens in a different way, or what could possibly be different, you know?
Yeah, so we come up with the ideas basically from the different things around us, and that's how we get inspiration. So
and within us. And within us,
of course. Once we get that idea, we send it back and forth to each other. We send it via text message. Mostly that's how we start. It's basically like how we have our, it's like our testing phase. Like, oh, what do you think if X happens? And the other person responds and they're like, oh, that's great, or not so much, or it's already been done. And then we kind of go from there. But whatever idea we have, we keep it all in one place. After we've texted it to each other and we decide, yeah, this is something that we might want to write, we'll then email it to ourselves, and we have a folder where we categorize everything by the age range in which the story would fall into. So if it's YA, which is young adult, if it's middle grade, if it's an adult novel, if it's a picture book, which hopefully one day we'll be able to write all of these. But we categorize the different ideas that we have and we put them there. And honestly, it's important for us to do that, because sometimes when we're in that idea phase of trying to figure out what is the next story that we're going to write, we sometimes run into a roadblock where we're like, oh my god, I can't come up with anything. And looking through the other ideas shows us that, one, yes, we're capable of coming up with ideas, and two, it might help us to like jog our memory or jog an idea so that way we can come up with another idea.
Moving on! Outline the story.
Yes.
Now, this is very important to do when you are co-writing. I know that there are a few different camps out there. We've got Panzers on one corner. Ding! Coming in at 150
pounds.
Okay, 150 pounds. Carrying no notebooks or carrying no notebooks. Because it's all in her head. We've got the Panzer.
Okay.
Coming in at 180 pounds because she is carrying so many index cards and a laptop and that to keep track of all of the plot threads is Bertha?
The pants, I mean the plotter.
The plotter.
She set this up and then she forgot what she said.
Yeah,
the whole idea of this is that you have some people who are pantsers and some people who are plotters. So I will speak to the pantsers because that's what I am. So a pantser is someone who writes by the seat of their pants. It's not a prancer, which I have said before. And essentially, a pantser is someone who, I'll describe myself. I write when I feel inspired, when I have the idea and I can visualize it in my brain, because then when I'm sitting in front of the computer or I'm writing in my notebook, it's just me writing down and describing exactly what it is that's going in my head. It's like a movie. I see it and then I have to write it out. It's like I'm possessed or under a trance and I have to write it. Just like speak for yourself, you demon. But anyway, that's how I write as a pantser. I just have to feel inspired and sit and think and let the story come out of my pen. I don't always know where it's going, but I know it's coming out.
Next up are plotters, and they are people who just like to be organized and have a very clear idea of what the story is going to be before they start writing. Now, there are lots of people who fall in the middle of these two extremes, who kind of write as headlight writers. Is that what they're called? They just kind of know where they're going, and then they get there, and then they see where else they're going, and that's another way that you can write as well.
And sometimes it's a perfect way to write yourself into a corner because you just made your characters do something and you can't write it out. So that happens to me sometimes.
Now, so for our purposes, we tend to be more on the plotting side because I like to tell Liko what to do, but also because even though we are very close, we don't actually share one brain, so it's very important for us to have the information out written so we can know what is going to happen together, so we don't get hung up not being able to write something before another person writes another chapter or scene.
It's
write the story.
All right, so writing the story is definitely where the bulk of your time will be spent, and for us, we don't really get caught up on word count. I think we have a general idea, like we'll say, okay, we want to get to 80,000 words. And then we work backwards from that. We'll say, okay, if it's 80,000 words and we have 30 chapters, each chapter has to be about this many words per chapter.
That doesn't always work out.
It does not always work out. But
it's nice to dream.
Yes. Usually we'll find that we end up being under in our first draft, and then as we revise, we get closer, usually over the target word count that we were going for. But for us, it's very important for us to know what is our target number of words, figure out the chapters, do your division, you know how much is between each chapter, and then we write, and we use that as a guideline, but we don't get caught up on daily words. Like, we know that some authors, as they're writing, they like to say, okay, I want to write 1,000 words per day. That doesn't work for us.
Word count is also very important, especially if you haven't been published before. It's better to stick on the average word count of the specific age range and genre that you're trying to get published in, because you don't want one extra barrier to get you a little bit further away from your goal of publishing a book. But as we have started to write more and publish more with our 2 books, you know, like 2 billion books,
right?
We do feel like we can get away a bit with the word counts if we were interested in doing that. I don't know, maybe our editor will see this and be like, no, you can't.
Exactly. We like to think we can get away with anything, and someone's like, let's go on and reel it back. But
and the benefit of having an extensive outline is that we can jump in wherever we go by whoever's most excited about writing a particular section or chapter, and we just kind of fill in the gaps wherever we go. And something else that we do is that whoever has written a particular section, the other person will go through, read it just to know where we are, and you know, do some housekeeping and tidying up some words and editing.
In that first round of us writing, there will definitely be times where we'll just leave things blank. We'll just say, okay, she walked into the room, world build here, continue on, because we don't want to get bogged down by that moment of like trying to beautifully describe something. Like, that first draft is just trying to get it out, and sometimes there will be certain things where we're writing and we need to do research to find out the what would actually exist or not. So for instance, in one of the good ones, they're in the car, we're like, oh, when were seatbelts made? Like, is that something that people would do, is put on their seatbelt? So we had to figure out, like, when did that happen? So as you're writing, you'll encounter certain things that need to be embellished upon, because you can't write everything in your outline, because if you wrote everything in your outline, that would just be writing the book.
Oh, now what we have here is, after you've written your story, you celebrate. Yay! Because you wrote an entire book, which is amazing, and you wrote it with another human being, and they are presumably still alive.
Yes. Which, honestly, that is a feat in and of itself. Go pour yourself a drink and get yourself a nice meal. Go dance, do all those other things, but really the most important thing is for you to celebrate, because it's hard, you know, being able to write a book alone already is a very hard endeavor. But one of the good things about writing with someone is that you have someone who's going through that entire process with you, and those moments of, I would say, loneliness or not even loneliness, but solitude that happen, that sometimes it's good because you need that to be able to get into your head to be able to write. It's great, but then there are definitely times when you wish that you could turn to somebody when you're writing alone to say, hey, let me bounce this idea off of you, or what do you think? So many times when we're writing, there will be a moment where I'll get stuck and I'm just like, oh, what's gonna happen? What needs to happen? And then I'll ask her to like, what do you think needs to happen? And just in asking her and saying it out loud and talking to her, the idea will come to me and I'm like, okay, thanks, never mind. And she's like, great, happy I could help. But it's just that idea of having someone who knows the story that you're working on, what you're going through, and being able to bounce those ideas off of them. So celebrate that because it is an accomplishment.
Yay!
Yeah.
And our final tip is the last tip, because we get this question a lot from people who are curious because they just like live for drama, which we do too. So we respect it. But they ask, how do you resolve those artistic differences? Well, one, Maika and I have pretty similar, you know, sensibilities when we write.
Yeah.
But in those moments when we do disagree, we kind of bounce our actual ideas of the plot differences that we have, or the characterization of a character that we disagree on. We'll talk it out, argue it out, yell it out to each other, and whoever's most passionate, there's usually one person who is I'm not gonna go there. Okay.
So, who's just being a troll and trying to stand up for the idea that they have, even though they know it's not best for the story.
Yeah, see, okay, fine, I'll say it. Yeah, there's usually one person who is, I guess, more willing to cut the baby in half than the other person, and we usually go with that mother who is more passionate.
She's talking about splitting the baby in half, and I'm like, a huge smile on my face, like,
yeah. Okay, but in those even more rare occurrences when we just like do not agree at all, we luckily have two other sisters and a mom and a dad and a grandma and two dogs who we then go and try to plead our cases to them, and we might go with what they say if we just cannot get it together.
I don't think it's happened for us very frequently. Like we usually know what happened, and there are sometimes times where we both can't figure out something. Like we know there's something missing, and
there's a donut. It's a donut.
Yes, we're like, the donut, what's the donut? But it's not the donut, the donut.
It is not a donut hole, but a smaller donut with its own hole.
It's missing the hole? Okay, whatever. If you watch Knives Out, then you'll get the reference, even though we totally butchered it. But that's literally what happens. Like sometimes it's... Thank you, Marissa. Sometimes it's not just us trying to reconcile differences. It's us getting to a point where we're both like, we're both out of ideas and we don't know what to do. So in that moment of talking it out, talking with other people, it helps us get to the story. And I think that's good because it allows us to have like a quick crowdsource of things. Like one of our sisters is really into like whodunits and murder mysteries and all of this. So
she's really into murder.
So we know that if we have a plot point that we can't figure out, we can go to her. Our other sister is really good at knowing, you know, the things that people will be talking about online and what might not go over well, and making us make sure that we are being responsible in the way that we're telling a story. So we're lucky that we have two people just in our sisters, our additional two sisters, that we can go to and run ideas by. But really, we don't have that many disagreements. We're sorry to disappoint y'all. We have disagreements about other things because, you know,
she's the worst, right?
I was gonna say we're sisters, and sisters have disagreements.
This is the end of our video, isn't it, Mika?
Yes. So if you watch this video, you know how to co-author a book, and those steps entail: 1, settling on a story idea; 2,
outlining the story;
3, writing the story;
4, have a way to settle artistic differences.
And that's it. And with a little bit of luck, you might be able to publish a book at the end of it all. So we will have another video where we'll actually go into depth about the whole publishing process and talk a little bit about how we were able to publish our first book.
Yay! Bye!
Thank you for watching. Subscribe, rate. Oh, what's the order? Rate, comment, subscribe.
Comment, rate,
Oh yeah. Yeah, we'll get the ending better. Bye!